I always say that if you are automating a bad process, then you're only going to get to the wrong answer faster.
Welcome to the Process Masters podcast. I'm here today with Colin Dowd. Colin is an industry strategy senior manager at Armino. He helps manufacturers, distributors, and private equity portfolio companies use data and automation to hit real business goals. At FabTech, this huge conference we've been in Chicago, Colin has spoken in Smart Moves, Automation Trends Shaping Manufacturing. So we'll have 30 to 40 minutes with Colin here. And in this time, you get a 90-day automation checklist you can use right away, how to link data to decisions and daily routines so wins stick, and 3 questions to ask any automation vendor right now. So, Colin, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
That's amazing. So, we're talking here with automation experts and workflow experts as well. So, when you see a new automation pitch in a conference like FabTech or any other, what are your first 3 checks before any demo?
Oh, goodness. First off, I want to make sure that it solves the problem that my business has. I think that is probably the most important thing. I always say that if you are automating a bad process, then you're only going to get to the wrong answer faster. So, really, what we want to do is we want to make sure that first off, it answers the problem that we actually have within our business. And we want to make sure that that process that we are using to solve that problem is already kind of situated and solved. So I would say right off the bat, those are probably the first two things that I would look for. And then finally, is it something that is already compliant with my systems that I have in place at this point? Does it already work, or is it something that I'm going to have to completely change my entire technology infrastructure in order to implement? Sometimes that is a necessary change, but more often than not, using the tools that you already have is gonna save everybody a lot of time, heartache, and headache.
Wow, that's a great answer. Let's unpack a little bit of that. So we can understand it better. One green light that you love, like it's a green flag and you implement it right away, and perhaps maybe one red flag as well.
Oh gosh. I would say when it comes to uh, just in general different companies that you might work for, responsiveness and working with you, I think, is a major green flag. Somebody who's going to be in your corner rather than somebody who just kind of pushes a solution that might not be the best for your business. That right there to me is a huge green flag. Somebody who might tell you right out the gate, we have a great solution and you have a great company, but that partnership's just not going to match. That's a good sign that they're just a good company to work with. On the opposite end, if there's a company who's just trying to push something down your throat, trying to get you to again make large investments right out of the gate without trying to get to know you or your business or your struggles, that's an area for concern. That's something that you might need to pump the brakes on, stop, and have a completely different conversation on right there.
Yeah, maybe watching their success stories, some stories from previous customers. Uh, do these actually help in decision making at that point?
I think so, for sure. I think that in general with automation right now, there are a lot of new companies, which is great to see. There's a lot of really exciting changing technology, but something that customers or companies need to keep in mind as well is sometimes some of these new companies do kind of struggle to have that bandwidth to give you the support that your company might need. That's not always the case, but it is something worth digging into to make sure that you are going to be a priority, and the company that you're partnering with is going to be able to give you everything that they're promising. Obviously, in the sales cycle, a lot of times people will promise you the moon at the very beginning, and sometimes, unfortunately, people just don't follow up because maybe they don't have the workforce or the expertise in place that they had hoped or initially thought they did. And on the flip side of that, sometimes there are companies that are very large and very robust with their knowledge and their workforce and everything like that. But if you might have a smaller company or a smaller project, sometimes that you might feel like you're getting pushed to the wayside, or you're being a little bit ignored for the bigger fish, essentially. So really finding that sweet spot of maybe not too big, not too small, the Goldilocks effect, if you will, while looking for a partner, I think is
Yeah.
going to be.
Everyone wants to be prioritized, right? Well, especially when if you're implementing. So speaking on implementing, I want to know what does the first 90 days, let's say. So the first 90 days when you finally decided on a vendor, finally decided on a solution, how to turn a show floor idea into a pilot with a clear number or a clear result in mind.
Absolutely, and I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head right there to begin with, and that's having a clear result from the very beginning. Having some kind of measurable success metric is extremely important. You wouldn't believe how many times I work with people who spend all of this money, all of this time to implement a process, and that process has been running for a couple months now. They look back and they say, "Is this a worthwhile use of our time and money?" And they don't really have a way to judge the success of that project. And unfortunately, that is something that is all too common. I feel like in a lot of these companies. But right off the bat, I would say one of the things that I always suggest, especially if you're kind of maybe getting your feet in with automation, is start small. Find a small project that is going to have significant value to your company. Maybe a problem that you already kind of know the answer to, or you already have an established process with, you just want to speed it up. That right there, I think, is going to be the best point, especially if you only have 90 days to where you want to kind of focus, get that area of focus. Um, Second off, I always say make sure you leverage the tools that you have. And by that, I kind of hinted at this a little bit earlier with technology stack,
Yeah.
but also your human capital. Who do you have that works at your company who might be able to help or really kind of be an advocate for this automation when you go through here? Uh, Also making sure that they're involved in that process. You wouldn't, again, believe how many times I've spoken with executives who implement automation programs that they think are going to be best for their people and their business, without having those people involved in the conversation from the beginning. If you're talking to John on the shop floor and he has one problem, but the administration or the executives think that that problem is completely different, like I said earlier, just going to get the automated process getting you to the wrong information faster. You need to make sure that John is involved in that process from day one so he can tell you what the true issue is and how you can really make John's life easier so he can do what he does best. I'm going a little bit off. I wouldn't say this is exactly a 90-day checklist as much as a more of important things to note when you're launching in those first 90 days. And then finally, I would always say plan for scale and scalability. Make sure that if you're starting small, you give yourself room to grow. Automation is a process, it's not a one time event. And that I think is extremely important for people to realize is that anytime you include automation, this is not a set it and forget it IT project. This is something that you will need to continue monitoring, and you need to have that infrastructure in place. I would say ideally before those first 90 days when you're going through everything to make sure that when you do grow, when you do see success from that first small project, that you already have the team in place who can take that first success and then expand it even more throughout your company. Um,
Wow,
And then I
that's so helpful, Colin. Let me just repeat and try to summarize what you just told
yeah,
us. It's a 3-item checklist that Colin just taught us. We need to take care first. We need to be very attentive to. I'll rewind. We need to have a scalability plan first on. We need to have the right people involved, and the process, that's the one I wanna stick with. The process that you choose to start with. This is counterintuitive, Colin, to be honest. This is counterintuitive because when you first start automating, you have so many issues and you want to go to the critical ones. You want to solve your problem, but you just told us that we should go to the ones that we maybe, we are in control of, those the easy
right.
ones first. So choosing the easy process first, can you expand on that?
Yeah, it's like when you're learning to swim, you don't jump into the deep end right away. You ease yourself into it because if you jump in the deep end right away, it's that whole concept of sink or swim. And frankly, I've seen a lot more people sink than I see them swim when it comes to situations like that. And so easing yourself into that and making sure that you have that kind of transition plan, I think is of paramount importance. And I think the thing that, again, people don't really talk about is that, from a people standpoint, from a human capital standpoint, you only have so many times that you can introduce a new process to your team and they'll still rally behind you. If you introduce a process that ends up failing dismally right off the bat, a lot of times your teams and your people are not going to have the same support for that program like they might have right off the bat. So, introducing something small, showing people, again, this is how this can help you, getting them really excited, having them see the results gets your entire team on board. So then they're wanting to participate in things like training. They're wanting to, hey, I saw what you did with John over on the line. I want to see how we can use automation back in the back office. How can we use this in our finance
Uh-huh.
ability? How
How
can we do this in other areas?
how do you defend that for like C levels, finance team? Because they are worried with the critical ones. So why
Of course.
starting with the easy ones if you can go big? Those types of arguments, you have to be prepared to hear that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that there's if you want to sometimes do some of these large scale automation projects, frankly put, that's going to come with a decent price tag most of the time. Some of these smaller projects are a lot more financially viable. And especially right now, when companies are dealing with issues like tariffs that are just destroying margins on certain projects, there is a I guess kind of more of a safety net. When you start small, you get to see, okay, this is the right partner. This works for us. We understand. You can get the kinks out on the small, cheap projects than trying to work them out on the big, really expensive ones. Executives, in my experience, always respond well to saving money and bottom line optimization. And so, really, again, starting small just really speaks to those.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you so much for expanding and explaining all of that. And how about the weekly rhythm? We talked about people and having people involved from the beginning. Setting up a weekly rhythm that you run with operations team or finance team to keep things, everyone informed and things running smoothly.
Yeah, absolutely. As much as we would love for automation to be absolutely perfect, set it and forget it, have no kind of issues, any person who has ever worked with technology in the history of history will tell you that unfortunately processes break, things change, they need tweaked, and that's an okay thing. It allows us to go in, see what's working, see what's not working, and make it work better for our team. So having this weekly cadence or monthly cadence, whatever it might be, allows you to one, make sure that your team feels heard during this conversation. Again, as much as I hate to say it, automation is kind of scary for a lot of people. There's these rumors out there that people are all going to lose their jobs because of RPA, and frankly, that's definitely not the case at this point. There's a uneasiness I feel like in our workforce when it comes to automation, to where we have to make it more approachable. We have to let people know, hey, we're not getting rid of your job. Like I said earlier, we're making sure you have the time to do what you do best. And so we're automating the smaller processes that take up the majority of your time. And so including them in that conversation allows them to, like I said, feel heard. Additionally, they're able to better tweak and solve problems. There was a company that I worked with several years ago that implemented a type of automation program, and they had stated that their goal was to essentially reduce waste on
Mhm.
one of their machines, and so they added an automated process. A couple months into this, they realized that the goal they had initially set and what they were really trying to solve for wasn't actually what they really wanted to do. And so having those weekly cadences or monthly cadences, or just in general, a recurring meeting
Yeah.
allows them to go in and pivot and solve the actual business need at any time. When it comes to automation, your problem should always be the North Star that you use to really kind of guide everything in your
Mhm.
conversations.
I love that. Your problem should be the North Star. So, talking about North Stars, talking about these analytics that we can extract from the problems, how do you turn these dashboards into simple actions for supervisors, let's say? I want to touch on the data turning into decisions, turning into daily routines now.
Absolutely. So there are a lot of different ways that we can do that. Right now, there's technology out there that can look at your data and it can change that data into kind of actionable steps that maybe your floor managers might be able to take to increase profitability, to increase productivity, whatever it might be. There are different programs out there that allow you to do that. Um, but just in general, I think it is important. You did kind of hit the nail on the head there. Having some kind of translation from the data to the action is going to be extremely important. There are a lot of companies, again, who have data, they just don't know exactly what to do with it. And knowing that, okay, if I get this result, this probably means that I have a problem in this part of my line. Or from a back office standpoint, if I'm getting this kind of backlog here, that means that this process is probably broken. And so again, having some kind of almost translator for
Yeah.
this that
It's about
into the action step.
storytelling. Yeah, it's about
Exactly.
storytelling, right? Yeah.
Right.
So you need to
Right.
look at the number and really understand what it means and what you can do about it. It needs to be actionable, really. So, do you have any tips on that for us? Like, oh, these metrics are the ones that matter most in the beginning or early on?
Hmm.
I
I
know
would
that's very
say
general. Yeah.
no, for sure. But just like kind of the process, I would again say start small. When you implement a lot of these processes, there is a tremendous amount of data that you might have access to, depending again on what process you're implementing and what it is that you're actually doing. Um, it's very easy to get lost in data.
Yeah.
It's very easy to fall down a rabbit hole. So again, like I said, that North Star, your
Yeah.
problem, focusing on the data that only relates specifically to that problem, just right out the gate, of
Yeah.
course. Afterwards, you can expand it, you can do everything like that. But only saying, okay, A plus B equals C, and focusing on that metric, a world of difference versus people who just try and jump into all the data
Yeah.
and cook the solution right off the bat. I've always found that the people who again focus on the small portion right out the gate are definitely more successful like that.
Definitely. Yeah, you touched on a very important point, the report overload that can be a consequence of having so much
Mhm.
data in front of you and every day having to analyze all of those numbers. If you don't connect them to what they do and the problem, that can be a problem. So, how do you avoid this report overload over time?
Oh, goodness, that's a great question. Um, I think there are a couple of different things. First off, I have, in my experience at least, a lot of manufacturers and distributors for that matter as well work a lot with several systems. And so they get a lot of different reports that they have. Frequently, those reports are all cobbled together. It might take somebody 6 hours to cobble these reports together. Then they send it off to other people. By the time somebody gets it, all that information is completely useless
Mm.
because it's out of date. I would say it's a lot easier to automate those reports. And I know that it sounds like I'm putting a Band-Aid on a Band-Aid here, but it's really a lot more. If you're able to put all of your reporting into one system right off the bat, or one file, or one report right out of the bat, that allows all of your places to have one source of truth. So when it comes to things like ordering, or when it comes to things like uh, predictive analytics or anything like that, you have one source of truth instead of these six different sources that all come together to try and mash something together. So to avoid this overwhelmingness, I would say it is important to have one central data point that you can always come back to as that point of truth. Um,
That's
yeah,
so
I
helpful.
kind of circumvented that answer, but I feel like it's
Yeah, I'm
close to it, yeah.
imagining here. I'm imagining this in reality, how it would be in turn things into like it would be easier for sure, in reality for the teams and everyone involved. So I'm wondering if you have any success story on that to share with us. Maybe a case story. Maybe you walked in and this is how it was on day 0, and then on day 90 or maybe 6 months later, how was the target, the steps you took, and the before and after metric or the main metric, the North Star?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can think of a specific one. This is a little bit more of a back office kind of thing, and it's with
Okay.
contract negotiation. This one I think is actually a really prime example of where somebody took automation on a process that might not always kind of come to mind when you think of automation. And they really saw some great benefit for it. But this company, very large distributor, was looking for a way to kind of speed up their contract negotiation. So they implemented a new tool that uses AI to actually do their contract negotiation. So what it'll do, it'll scan your contract that it's currently in existence or the first draft or whatever it might be,
Uh-huh.
and it'll suggest different areas where you can optimize it to help your company. So it might say instead of 30 barrels, it'll be 50 barrels or whatever it might be. And so it'll take that contract then and it'll send it to your supplier. That supplier then has the option to accept it right out of the gate. They can deny it and respond with their own kind of response. Or there are three kind of middle of the road response, pre populated responses that they have as well. So it's kind of that you probably want this, they probably want this. Here's kind of the middle that you can come back with.
This is
So they
with
can,
the AI. This happens with the
correct.
AI, with the process already mapped. But when you walked in, I imagine it wasn't that clear, or was it?
Oh, absolutely not,
Yeah.
absolutely not. I think anytime I'm walking in, there's probably a couple things at least that are going wrong with the process. But no, you're absolutely right, and thank you for stating that here. So they knew that they had to respond back to their distributor, and they came back. Overall, these processes were taking about 6 to 8 months to
My
get this
goodness.
negotiation done. It was a tremendous amount of time because of all the back and forth,
Yeah.
and because it would go to legal, and then it would come back, and then it would go to compliance and make sure that they were all good and everything. So thank you for that call out. Fantastic point.
And
Their
Colin,
process was not great.
as you describe that, I'm sure many of our listeners and people watching here today, they can relate. They can
Absolutely,
definitely relate.
absolutely.
That's what usually takes, right?
Well,
So much
here's
back
the
and forth.
crazy thing. That 6 to 8 month process, we were able to get down to under a week
My goodness. How did you do
because
that?
of this program. Because the back and forth
Oh, yeah.
was eliminated so much, and people were able to respond on their own time. They didn't have to necessarily do it waiting for other people.
Mhm.
Legal was included from the beginning, so everything was already good with the compliance aspect, and uh, it was a pre like I said, they had pre-approved options, so you
Wow.
didn't necessarily have to go through and wait 30 minutes for them, or sorry, 30 days for them to come back and send a response for something. They can just look through and say, "Okay, I mean, this is agreeable to us.
Yeah.
This is agreeable to them. Why not just shorten this time and go with one of those options?" And select one of the options, and again, like I said, it just cut all of that time in an in, less than half, in at like 80% of the time that it would
Wow,
take to do
that
so.
sounds like a dream. It does
Absolutely,
sound like a dream.
absolutely.
But listen,
Could you imagine having 80% of your time back during a day? That'd be great.
I don't. I would have to actually think about it because it really
Right.
sounds like a dream. But Colin, people listening here, someone might say, "Oh, but in this case, they had an easy process, or not all of my contracts would come under one single process." Or I imagine the customizable items would be adjusted, right?
Mhm.
You can work around that specific process. Does that happen, really, or no, not in that case? Can you
Oh,
talk on the objections that you might have heard?
absolutely. And first off, I want to say that it's not always a one fits or a one size fits all situation. You're going to have outliers in almost any automation process. And I think that that's really important to note. There's not going to be something that works 100% of the time unless you're automating something on your line and you're just doing repeatable manufacturing. If you have if you have to change anything, that's gonna change your automation process, and I think that that is really important. Um, we're looking for a solution that's going to save time, not save the world, if that makes sense here. We're trying to make it better, not completely, like I said, automate somebody out of a job. There's still people who are gonna have to go in, like you said, outlier contracts, who are gonna have to say, "Okay, this is not exactly what we're looking for. It's a good tool, it got us started, but we're gonna have to hop in here and we're gonna have to do something." There is a large company out there, I think of kind of like this, that, has a AI-based applicant tracking system for their HR. Right now, they are actually having a class action lawsuit, because this ATS AI usage, is disproportionately rejecting individuals who are a little bit older than the average here. And because they didn't have somebody who is going through and monitoring that, and like you said, having that kind of second eyes on things, they are again being currently sued for, I believe it's in the billions of dollars here at this point. So you are always going to need human eyes on something. To the people who would object to that, um, yeah, you're not going to save every moment of every day. You're not going to be able to automate Kathy and purchasing away just yet. That's not a thing. Um, but you're saving Kathy time, that's for sure. And then her, especially when we have right now an issue with the workforce, you're making people's lives easier, which makes them happier at work, which it helps you with retention, and allows you to keep your employees longer. And so if there's an Amazon warehouse that comes down the street and offers them 50 cents an hour more, they're not going to necessarily leave for that because they know that you have their back with these processes that you've implemented as well. It's a much bigger picture situation than just if the glove fits kind of situation.
Wow, that's cultural change for sure for many companies. And speaking on that, on people and change and how to make this automation stick, adoption, you mentioned this before, it for sure beats features. So, what is the smallest change that can create daily habits? Maybe having involving your team, and you mentioned involving people from the beginning. How do you do that? Do you create stand ups, visual boards, or maybe SLAs? How do you do that really in reality?
The answer to this so far is yes, and. I have always found that the more that you can involve people in the process, the better they're going to feel about it. And they might if they're included from the beginning and there's a pivot that has to be made along the road, because they were involved in that process, they're going to understand, hey, we had to give this in order to get this. And I think that is, again, extremely important. But before you even start automating anything, before you even get to that point, that is when you need to have individuals involved. Before you start anything, while you're mapping your process, make sure that that is the point that you have people talking to you. Make sure that you have uh, insider knowledge essentially on what's going on because those are the people who deal with your product or your process the most is the people who do the work every day. Don't assume that you know everything about your business. And I know a lot of people listening here, they are not thinking that by any means. They're educating themselves with podcasts like this, so they're not necessarily the individuals who might think that way. But challenge yourself on something like that to make sure that you bring in at least I would say 3 to 5 people who do that kind of work to be able to again get second and third opinions
Yeah.
on the processes.
Yeah, definitely. It's not someone from the outside who's coming in and telling you how the process should be. Am I right about that?
Right. Absolutely, absolutely, because everything's gonna be different for every company. Just like fingerprints, I mean, you started your company or you're running your company one way, the same type of company down the street might run it a completely different way with different processes and different systems. And that doesn't make it worse, that doesn't make it better, it just makes it different, and that's what, I think is, of course, very, very important to note. That's a great call out for sure.
Yeah, and we search so much for playbooks and we benchmark here and there and we want the right answer. And
Right.
many times the right answer is inside our own companies, and especially with people, like you just said. So what is one thing, Colin, that people, maybe leaders, let's talk about the leaders, what should they probably stop doing when they are in these automation rollouts? Is there a behavior or maybe a type of decision making or some misstep that you see often that you think maybe we should stop doing that?
I think that there's a couple of things. I would say a lot of people in the past have gone through and purchased these new technologies or whatever they are, and they're trying to make a square peg fit in a round hole. They're not looking at what the problem actually is that that tool can solve, and they're trying to use that tool to solve everything. Right now, the big thing is AI.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to sprinkle AI on everything and thinking that that's the solution. As much as love AI and I use it on a daily basis, it's a great tool. It's not going to solve all your problems. And if you try and make it solve all your problems, you're going to just create so many more headaches. So initially, I would actually say just back off on the AI for a little bit. I think that it's a great tool, but it doesn't need to be in everything. Um, I think that Go ahead.
Yeah, it brings me a concern though, because you don't want to be left behind, right? And you
No.
think, yeah, so okay, AI is not for all the time, for everything, but why should I be listening to this conversation on
Great.
AI, and when should I step in?
So there are other tools other than AI that might be better suited for something. You might just need an API that connects something together that you already have. Just adding AI on something for the sake of AI, just because it's the current buzzword of technology, doesn't solve your problem. It doesn't even make you look like you're cutting edge. It just you're using the wrong tool. You're using a butter knife to cut steak. It's not the right tool that you need in that situation. And I think that that really is the important takeaway from that is
Yeah.
that make sure that you're using the right tool for the right project at the end of the day.
And how do you get a glimpse, or maybe you identify right on what is hype from what is help?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great question. And I think that there's a lot of, I had a whole portion about this when I was speaking at FabTech on what is hype and what is reality here.
Yeah.
And I think that you need to realize that AI is not the robots controlling the world here at this point. It is great for small, repeatable, low risk tasks. I think that that is again kind of an important focus. For example, there is a lot of AI being used in sales technology right now. It's great because it'll suggest, hey, based on the things that this customer is ordering, they might also need these other parts, or they might also need this kind of solution here. Which is great as a suggestion. Now, if it goes haywire and suggests something completely like out of left field, that's not gonna hurt anything in your conversation. You might just kinda give it a funny look while you're talking to a client, but it's not going to long term hurt anything. Now, if you use AI to try and, I think about it using it. There's this hype right now that AI will be able to replace all coders, essentially,
Mhm.
and citizen developers, or just like regular people like you and I who don't have a background in coding, will be able to go through and code an entire website, or fix anything like that. That's just not the case. And in
Yeah.
fact, that's extremely dangerous. If you give a bot access to all of your information for your company, and something goes wrong, you can have a massive cybersecurity breach for your company, and that's the last thing that you would like. Obviously, is for your
Yeah.
company data to be just out there in the ether or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
So really, like I said, knowing the right tool, using this repeatable process is great for automation. But if it's something that needs some kind of creativity, or it needs that secondary eyes, make sure you include humans in
Yeah.
that situation.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah, and keeping an eye on the problem. The first thing you just told us when we started this conversation, I think this also should be included here when we're
Yes,
speaking on AI. And yeah, so we you mentioned fab tech in your talk there. That was awesome. Thank you so much for doing that and for sharing your knowledge like that. So when you are facing a big conference like that, you're going through all of those halls, so many, you can get lost in there.
absolutely.
How do you actually decide on who to talk to? You should simply go or no go rules. You should create to decide on potential vendors.
Yeah,
Right now, you have so many options, right? I think that's actually a problem for many executives and decision makers that you have so many options. That was not the case 2 decades ago, but this is the
yeah.
case now. So, how do you decide? How do you keep control on? I am on top of things. I'm using the best solutions there are, but at the same time, you don't want to, talk to 100 people in a day or 200 people in a day.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I might be a little bit different than the average person, but when we go to a thing like that, or when I've helped my clients go to conferences like that, I always say go in with a specific goal in mind. And again, like I said, that North Star, that is just a recurring good practice to have in most facets of your life here.
Yeah.
Um, but the thing that I always say with one of these big conferences is chances are you're not going to sign a contract at those. You're there to learn and you're there to network. That I would say is the main takeaway that I find successful for conferences like that is finding out what tools actually exist that can solve my problem, what in general new technology is there that might solve a problem that I didn't even know was solvable quite yet? And who are the players that I need to know in order to make sure that I can solve that problem? So if you're trying to find a very specific piece of technology, you can go and you can see, okay, these are the players that we're here. These are the individuals that have what I need. From that point, you can meet some of the people. You can usually most of those booths have sales guys and engineers who can really kind of give you the ins and outs, a good size demo depending on the product. Uh, Meeting them, having that really early conversation, and then from that point on, you can either choose to follow up with them if they seem like they're meeting with what you would like, or you can just not follow up with them anymore. And everybody listening who has a Salesforce, I'm sure, really hated me saying not following up with people. Uh, but at the same time, again, it's your time and it's valuable, and so finding the partner that you're looking for, finding the supplier that you're looking for, that is, I think, more of a, um, accessible goal
Yeah.
than going to some of these conferences, and hoping that they're gonna walk away with signed contracts or anything.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for the sales folks listening to us, I think in the end, we want to help people out. We want to make sure that the solution is actually not only contracted, but used and used well.
Right.
And right, there's a good word out there for this, yeah, for what the solution brings. So definitely, I think this is helpful for everybody. And what are the three questions, let's say, that you make sure your clients ask vendors in situations like that, the top three, to vet, let's say, someone.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the first off is, what is your experience in my industry? Do you know my pain problems? Do you know my industry? There are a lot of really great new technologies that are out there right now that are solutions, but they might not have any experience with somebody who's worked in industrial manufacturing
Yeah.
before.
Mhm.
So their solution is it could be a great solution, but they don't know if it really fits you because they don't get you as a company. So finding somebody who knows your problem, who kind of marches to the same drum, I think that's extremely, extremely important. Um, I always say the uh, capability and the capacity, I think is always important as well. Like I said earlier, with some of these small companies, they're fantastic and they really can be great. But making sure that they have the ability, both technically and physically, to be able to take care of you. I think that that's obviously again a really important one. Um, and alongside that, I always put like a 2B on that one, and that is ongoing support. So, somebody, if you have an issue, you can always call them up and say, hey, I've got this process that's going haywire. What's going on? How can I fix it? Can you give me some suggestions here? I think that that's really important. And like I said a little bit earlier, and the third I always say is transparency. You're looking for, again, a long term partner. So if there's somebody who says, "Hey, this is great, but it's not going to work for you," or there's somebody who just again gives you that honest truth of, "Hey, you really need to work on your process here before we implement anything." Those are the kind of people that you want to work with because those are the people who care about you and your business and overall the success of the project because they know that a successful project means a long-term relationship. And so I would say that those 3 really, to me at least, are 3 really good things to, pay attention to or questions to ask when you're vetting a potential vendor.
That's amazing, Colin. Wow, so helpful. People, we're here with Colin Dowd, industry strategy senior manager at Armanino, and we're actually learning so much from Colin. But yeah, our time is almost due. So I want to know, Colin, where can people reach out to you if they want to learn more?
Absolutely, great question. So I'm on LinkedIn, for sure. That's a great way. You can always reach out to me. My direct messages are open, or you can always email me at Colin Colin dot Dowd Dowd at armanino.com.
So cool. Thank you so much, Colin, for being here with us. And everyone listening today, I'm Amelia. I'm your fellow process automation workflow enthusiast. And I want to invite you to pick one process, a simple one, as Colin said, and run an automation, perhaps with a tool that you already have in place, with the people you have in place, following Colin's suggestions here for us. Follow it for 90 days. Have a 90-day plan and share it with us. Share it here with us. I hope to see you soon in another Process Masters podcast. Colin, again, thank you so much for everything that you just laid out for us. It was really helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Hope to see you next. And you too. Hope to see you next in our next Process Masters podcast.